Hey, Tel Aviv, all right. You guys bring the energy, huh? I love that. Okay, yeah, you can read all about me up here. You know, I've done a lot of things in insights, marketing, branding, and activation. I got my start in starting in professional skateboarding and then building skateboarding and action sports brands. You know, I've done a lot of things up here, like HBO, Disney, working with Ashton Kutcher and a lot of famous people, and also working with a lot of startup brands. But the reason why I'm here is, personally, I'm passionate about helping young people, creators, and businesses to seize the opportunity, seize their potential. That's why I'm here. And that's why I get along so well with Yaniv, you know? And I gotta say, and for the next 4 days, I'm gonna be documenting some of the top professional skateboarders in Israel. I got confirmation that one of the largest US media publications is gonna accept my submission, and I'm gonna do an article. I'm gonna show everybody in the world just how rad the Israeli skateboarders are. So let's hear that for Tel Aviv and Israel skateboarders. All right. But, you know, I've become a leading expert in youth marketing by mastering the art of co-creation. And I must say that is something that all of us can do. You can do. We can all do it equally as well. We just have to give a shit, you know, in order to care about co-creating and giving young people a seat at the table, right? If I am the Yaniv of the USA, hell yeah. Because he does do almost the same process that we do, give or take here and there. I lean into action sports a lot because of being a former professional skateboarder, but we work with the social impact, we work with mental health, we work with entertainment, CPG, so there's a lot of alignment, and it's a great honor to have a partner like Tink. So let's hear it for the association, let's hear it for Yaniv and the Tink team. That's amazing stuff. So let me see if I can pull this off here. Well, today I'm going to brief you a little bit, because today I'm going to talk about a concept called brand magnetism. And I'm going to share the top 50 magnetic brands that is from one of my favorite research partners, DCDX. And it's really interesting stuff. And then I'm going to talk about how all of you can improve your own brand or personal brand or creator brand magnetism, okay? But then, at the end, I'm gonna put all of you to work. And we're gonna do a self-assessment. You're all gonna self-assess your current and your future capability of brand magnetism, of generating brand magnetism. So, okay. Let's see here. And I got so many things in my hands. Like, look, if you want to break down brand magnetism in its most simplest form, it's strengthening your connection with young people, okay? But it's also kind of, from a digital marketing perspective, a social media marketing perspective, it's share of conversation meets directional strategy, okay? So that said, you might recognize this next scene. It is actually how I believe that people feel when they repel from ineffective push advertising.
Turn the ship around.
Yeah, I think you're right. Full reverse. Chewie, lock in the auxiliary power. Chewie, lock in the auxiliary power. Why are we still moving towards it? We're caught in a tractor beam that's pulling us in.
That's Star Wars, and that's getting sucked into the evil Empire's tractor beam, if you didn't know what that was. It dates itself a little bit, but it's very effective. Basically, it sucks. Disruptive advertising sucks. That's why culture first is always the way to go, right? Do you agree with me? Okay, yeah, you do. Okay, so when we think of brand magnetism, you know, you put your UGC hat on. We're talking about user-generated content here, and we're talking about your sustained ability to inspire that voluntary content creation and conversation. That's what it is in its qualitative form, and that's without being asked. And that does not include paid media in any way, shape, or form. So when you look at the UGC opportunity, it's astronomical, isn't it? You know, with that many minutes of daily watch time, you know, 6 in 10 people, depending on who you ask, are going to say that UGC feels genuine, as dangerous or as incredible as that is. And 70% are relying on user-generated content to make their purchase. So this is clearly the currency of importance. And we believe that UGC signals the truth. And so how does this brand magnetism work, right? You know, the idea is like there's the popularity, the consistency, and the momentum of, I'll say young people in this case, Youth Marketing Conference, but people sharing that content because they love it and because it's almost a part of their shared identity as to why they're sharing that content, right? And so what we do at DCX and then with Youthvine, what we do is we translate that, and we translate that into the marketing strategies and then the marketing activation, just for clarity. We collect that UGC from TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We're measuring the weekly engagement of how often that it's ranking, because we have a percentile, and I'm going to break this down in a second. And then there's the consistency and the popularity. And without getting into the weeds too far, the momentum reveals the trajectory on this. So let's move forward a little bit. I'm going to show you the top 50 magnetic brands, okay? Now, what we do is CPG, entertainment, fashion, and what the baseline for this is that there's at least 100 plus shares in a month, and then there's a secret recipe as to which kind of brands are getting pulled in there. But then for other companies, we do custom if it's the category that we're not always doing, okay? So here are the top 50 magnetic brands according to global user-generated content shared. Look at that list. I'm going to give you a moment to take a look at that list. Some of them will surprise you. Some of them, most of them will not surprise you. But that's the numbers. That's no lie. That is user-generated content, no paid media from the young consumers or any age consumer that love those brands. I'll make sure you guys have a copy and a link to this so you can study it. There's no way you can go through this thing, but it's pretty incredible. Now, when we look at our 20, it becomes very interesting. Now, I do want to say that like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are intentionally excluded from this. Pretty incredible. And see, I mean, in some ways, number 4 will surprise you a little bit. But that's the volume. Doesn't lie. And Apple, Roblox, and Disney, yeah, you expect that. Okay. Now, what's so interesting is when a brand falls off that list. Because last year, Crocs was like up on top. Did you even see Crocs on that list? You know, so when the UGC does signal the truth, it's no lie. It happens or it doesn't happen. Okay, and then when you know, I'm not a data wonk, but the reality is you can see the popularity, you can see the consistency that builds over time, which then starts to indicate, you know, weaker, relevant, functional. We look at functional like, you're doing okay. You know, your business is thriving. We look at weak, not necessarily that sales are weak or anything, but that brand love, that compel to share the content is lower. So this doesn't always, you know, this is directional. This doesn't indicate that your business health is bad, but it definitely indicates who loves what if they're sharing that content. So what compels people to share this content? How do brands start to get in that mix and rise up the matrix? That's the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? So I'm going to take you through 5 of these, I call them mindsets. Maybe they're directional strategies, and through 5 different stories of brands you know, brands you may know, and maybe a brand or two you don't know. So Red Bull, we've all heard of Red Bull. How many people here have seen this building drop by Red Bull, right? And Red Bull tends to be, you would actually think that Red Bull would be much higher on the list, right? But one of the things that Red Bull does is they're the masters of seeding this magnetism. Because if I look at everything about this activation, the one thing that stands out the most to me that I felt was the most magnetic is that Red Bull didn't even associate with this in the beginning. How many of you recall that? In fact, a lot of us thought that this was AI and thought it was fake. They did such an incredible job seeding this magnetic moment that when finally, at the day of, this is actually a good friend of mine, Sandro Diaz, the day that he did that, or a few days before, I texted him, I said, is this shit real? Are you dropping off a building? Because it wasn't associated with Red Bull at all. It was absolutely not commercial. It was seeded in all kinds of different accounts. I mean, this was very, very authentic, but this was engineered for brand magnetism so that people would get curious, people would wonder, and then as it started to reveal that it was actually true, it was real, it was shared like, mad. So that is super cool. And I think the whole idea is pretty simple, of working with those creator accounts, working with those media accounts and seeding something and not placing your or their brand all over it right from the beginning. And I think that doesn't have to be so astronomical as dropping it off a building. It can be done with something much more simple. It's this very simple principle. How many of you are aware of Skull Candy as a brand? Hands up. Okay. 2 or 3 years ago, how many of you thought that Skull Candy was dead? Just dead. I mean, I thought it was deader than a doornail, And I'm going to explain a few different things that I find very interesting about Skull Candy and their capability to generate brand magnetism, okay? First, we look at the partnership with To Write Love on Her Arms. Are you familiar with To Write Love on Her Arms? It's to help educate on suicide prevention. It's really important, okay? But they make products, a lot of collaborative products. To Write Love on Her Arms is a product brand, a merchandise for mental health awareness and help. Now, when Skull Candy partners with them, they're not putting any media behind it. They're really seeding it. They're letting the cause and the people carry this. They don't put any media behind this partnership. This partnership is very successful. So that's cause marketing, right? And it's magnetic, it's being shared, it really falls into the criteria. But really the secret sauce with Skull Candy and why you'll start to see Skull Candy thriving as a price point to medium price, low to medium price point headphones is because they adopted a complete culture-first strategy with every single thing that they did. They took so much risk. Their primary employment strategy was to take people from Vans shoes and Igloo coolers, which happen to be 2 brands that really get brand magnetism and they get culture marketing. And it did take them 2022 to 2025 to get back up there in the rankings, but this is incredible brand magnetism and an incredible turnaround of a brand that, let's face it, nobody needs Skull Candy. I mean, Brian, the CEO, would kill me for saying that, but the real truth is we don't need Skull Candy. But they're rapidly owning the low to medium price point category of headphones. Pretty magnetic. Now, how many gamers here know Stardew Valley really well? Okay, me, I really didn't either. But a lot of people on my team do. But the reality is he's a solo independent developer whom everything they do, their mods, their guides, everything they do is generated by the community. This is brand magnetism, no media, people sharing, co-creating and sharing literally every aspect of it, from even like how the gameplay works itself. But for something from like an independent game developer to still be going relatively strong and trending since 2016, that is amazing. But they're engineering, they're co-creating, they're involving every stakeholder, not just the game players, but everyone in the process. Now, when you do this type of co-creation, most brands hesitate to do it because it takes just a little bit longer. It takes a little bit more concerted effort and care to bring young people and gamers of all ages into the conversation, to sit them down at the table and have these conversations. It does take a little bit longer, but if you get efficient at doing that, that's not a fluke. That's by design. Now, McDonald's, you can love them, you can hate them, but McDonald's, and actually Starbucks too, they have so much brand magnetism, so much user-generated content, their characters, their colors, there's so many textures to their food and everything. But what was magnetic about, or is magnetic in this particular case that we can learn from McDonald's, is that in big companies, in massive billion, trillion-dollar corporations, to do really cool, culture-first, risky things is often unheard of. Because you can think of the Happy Meal as a canvas. And that seems very basic, that you're gonna have Happy Meals. We can decorate Happy Meals with anything, right? But at a company like McDonald's, that's not easy to get that kind of a thing approved. Now, having Angel Reese do this, that sets precedence. That's a risk, you know, female athletes and really doing that. But McDonald's has done this on regional levels in most countries. They've done things with street artists. They've used that Happy Meal as a canvas to connect to culture. And now McDonald's and maybe not so much Starbucks, but they're understanding culture first, and they're listening. And they're probably slower, but they're effective. So that's the thing, and then that's a principle. That doesn't require a big corporation. That requires paying attention, knowing what's going on in culture, knowing where you as a brand can be a contributor. And that's very impressive to me, that McDonald's can often be a cultural contributor to things like this. Even if it's just a billboard on a box for an entity like McDonald's, it's very impressive. I never eat at McDonald's. I'm like not a backer, but this is a fact. So Nutter Butter. Yes. Nutter Butter. We could call Nutter Butter the king of UGC if we really wanted to, but like, they're not doing ads, they're being weird. I think every brand, I feel like every brand that's, you know, targeting youth culture now is looking, they don't even know they're looking at Nutter Butter, but that's what everyone wants to try to do, is be weird for your brand DNA, push the limits. They push the limits with creativity with Nutter Butter, man. I mean, it's awesome. And the fact that there's like, in all this UGC, there's no paid media. I think to say that there's no paid media with Nutter Butter as a product like that is a bit too much extreme. But these TikToks and Reels, man, and Shorts, they're unpaid. That's hell of amazing UGC. And when you look at, like, how can I, as a brand, do that, right? I mean, there's a lot of different foods out there that haven't done this, that could do it. I think the thing that we have to remember is that when we want user-generated content to work like this, we have to very strategically seed it. We have to create that content. We have to put that content out into the universe if the community and the audience isn't already doing it. So I think that you have to look at this for the brand that you work for and say, can I do this? I mean, I don't have peanuts and all kinds of cool stuff that's gonna look visually pleasing, but you can. There is a way to do it. And you don't just have, because a lot of times brands will hesitate to do it. They say, oh, you just have to wait and see if it happens. That's bullshit. You can create some really cool ideas and put them out into the universe if you're connected with the right people who can do that in an authentic way that doesn't look just so obvious that you just paid for that to get seated. So I think that is a very important reminder. So now we're gonna do a little bit of work. So grab your phone, grab your notes, or just remember, whatever you need to do. When you look at each question that I'm gonna put forth, you can score it with 5 because that just means that you're doing it great. You feel that you're rocking if you say 5, okay? And if you say 3, maybe you're pretty confident. And 1 is like maybe sometimes you hit it. Success, magnetism, effectiveness, however you wanna look at it. And 0, if you feel like the truth is your company just isn't getting it. Look, no one's gonna judge you. We're not gonna know your answers, but be honest, be real. So pick 1 per question, write them up. Okay, so tribes versus audience. When I say tribes, I mean culture, I mean interest-based groups, communities, versus saying, we are targeting teens, or we are targeting kids, or we are targeting young adults, because that rarely ever works, that you just target a demographic, okay? That's just one layer on the cake. So are you building a movement, or are you just renting attention here and there and just hoping to God that it works? Be honest with yourself, it's okay. None of us are perfect all the time, but think about it, Because if you have an answer to this one, and you have actual solutions to this one, you can go back to your company and help drive some change. So we look at having some meaning behind and a part of your messaging, or do you just have messaging that fits a CTA because it'll probably convert? And is that just what you're focused on? That messaging has to convert. Are you thinking like that? Because the audience, young people, they don't give a shit about your conversion at all. They want you to do something that's interesting, that's cool, that's helpful, that's functional. That's what young people want. That's the BS filter that they have. And that's what you have to break through. You have to get through their filter. You know them, you know your audience, but you have to do this. Some substance. Something interesting, something that you can have some purpose behind. You know the values of your consumer, the people that you want to be a part, subscribe, purchase, have impact for your organization. On co-creation versus control. Now, this is a situation and a problem for almost every company. And very few companies do co-creation at all. Be honest. I mean, you say that word at probably 90% of companies, and they're just gonna look at you and they're gonna go, co-creation? Is that like UGC, or is that or just like they don't even get the fact that you need to bring your people, your audience, your community, the people that share values and interests with you into the equation in many different ways. And are you building with them? Or are you broadcasting at them? Because Stardew wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for co-creation, you know? And you think like could you imagine the focus groups and co-creative activities that McDonald's does before they get to a Happy Meal with Reese Angel? It's like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they get there, you know? And I'll tell you a story that I know is totally okay to tell you. Is I was invited at the top of Target to try to figure this out. And every department in Target was like, this is what we need to do. We have to do this if we want to be more successful. And they all looked at me and they just said, nah, we can't do it. No go. I was like, why? I just broke down the whole plan. And they said, there is no champion at Target that can even administer this. We have to go by department to just to do their best based on insights. They don't do it because they just don't put the energy in to do it. I mean, that's incredible. And it's still the case. Now, Target, they're up on top, you know, and they do their best, and individual brands and individual departments at Targets try to do that their best and have great people. So they were very, very successful. But they are missing out on some things because there have been times when they did it inadvertently and had done some really cool stuff. Like there was Woodward Skate Camp and Action Sports Camps where they made obstacles built on Target, and there were people that they somehow in the creative department were able to bring in there and kind of just go rogue and pull it off. But imagine if they were able to do that in an ongoing systematic process. I think it would be even more incredible. And reach versus resonance. Ooh. Do they care? Do they take action? Is there love? You know, are they talking about you because they want to, or are they talking because you paid them? I mean, this is all-encompassing. So if you're planning on resonating with a target audience without involving them a seat at the table, I would be the guy who would say, oh, I can't help you. Can't help you. If you said to me that I couldn't use a co-creative technique and to try to figure out a problem for a brand to get real, true resonance over time without involving the audience, and not just focus groups, not just surveys and stuff. People lie about that. They game those things. When you get down in and involve young people with a seat at the table, magic happens. And that's how you start to get to resonance. You know, this is a long game when you're talking resonance. We all need reach. You know, saying verses is almost wrong, right? We need the reach, but without the connection and without the resonance, we don't have shit, you know? And we can have it for a campaign. We might do it for a promotion. We might get something that works for a spike, but magnetism, you know, it's resonance. You know, they're not exactly the same, but magnetism is a way you're going to get to resonance. This is a hard one. I don't think there's going to be too many high scores here. It's hard. So, related, right? Campaigns versus continuity. How are you doing? Ask yourself that question. Now, this is also a very, very hard one for most brands to do. Now, let me articulate this a little bit. If we use creator, influencer talent, you know, having a creator be a part of just a campaign, it's not wrong, but it's one-off. It's, no matter what, it's semi-transactional. But if you know you're going to have, say, 3, 4, 5, 6 campaigns for the year, and you're partnering with these creators, then you're changing a little bit from, say, from the talent perspective anyways, from campaign influencer to ambassadors, okay? And if you want to be more cost efficient and be more effective and try to reduce the perception of it being transactional and paid, then you need to be thinking about continuity, you need to be thinking about ambassadors over just one-time creator campaigns where they just come in, they come out. Sometimes, if there's a really, really good fit, just a one-off campaign is what you need to do, but it's that resonance piece, that caring, that being a part of it, that vetting the people, that is the difference between that continuity and the campaigns. Now, being consistent is key in all this, being the continuity, but do they know you're going to show up, or do they appear that you're going to have something to sell? You know, this is also really such a need for culture first, right? Because if you're into certain cultures, then you're not just going to show up for one season and leverage a certain sport. You know, you're going to be there for that sport all year long. And then the players, the creators are going to be like, hey, this company, this agency, they're serious, they care. So this is the kind of context to think about. Because if you just show up with that sport during holiday sales season, you know, the bullshit filters up. They're like, oh, that's cool. I mean, it works sometimes, but there's not that continuity, right? So I'd be very curious where you all sit. Do we have anybody honestly in the 20 to 25? And we could have some. Do we have any 20 to 25s? All right. These are the people I want to talk to after, so I can learn something too. Okay, who do we have in the 12, the building? This is a great place to be. You don't have to put your hands up, that's okay. I kind of lied before because I said I wasn't going to call you out. So if you could be scattered, if you're 6 to 11, 0 to 5, too bad. No one's seeing it. But, you know, sometimes it takes years for companies to even figure that out. And that gap, that's your roadmap, okay? So, brand magnetism, what can you do to get more people to love your brand, share it on the merit, okay? That's it. That's the thing. Thank you very much. Do we want to do Q&A, or are we doing that here? No, not really. We're not doing that here. Okay. Thank you.